Good evening guys, welcome back to my session. So as per we were discussing in the last class, we had done a complete detail of what is inert pair effect. You remember I was talking about inert pair effect, how the outermost 2s electrons were, outermost s electrons were not able to take part in bonding, right? So we had done a complete discussion about inert pair effect in our, not the last class, but some classes back, right? With that particular discussion, we finally moved on to what is Lewis dot structure, right? What are the Lewis dot structures which are drawn for different molecules? What are the postulates given by Lewis? And then also I remember we were doing something related to what are the good points or what are the exceptions when we will be talking about the Lewis dot structures. So having done a complete discussion about the Lewis dot structure. So that theory was given at the beginning. I mean, it was just, you can say, a framework in order to understand the chemical bonding. But as per we have done in the chapter atomic structure, we studied lots of theories, right? But then there were lots of problems associated with these theories. Similarly, when we did the beginning of the chapter chemical bonding, so there was this theory given by Lewis, and again, as per normal thing, there were lots of exceptions also which we have faced, right? Then what we did, we stopped there and we started studying something related to coordinate bond or covalent bond. With the coordinate covalent bond, I told you that, for example, if there is any particular bond which is formed in such a manner that atom A is having a pair of electrons which is extra. Let's say the octet is complete. So the octet is complete, but this pair of extra electron pair is there associated with the atom A. And let's say if there is another atom B which is having deficiency of electrons. So when there is deficiency of electrons and A is having extra pair of electron, so this can be given from A to B, right? I remember telling you the conditions how a coordinate covalent bond can be drawn. One more thing I told you in the last class, that if it is a coordinate covalent bond, you can also consider it to be a pure covalent bond. The only thing that you have to do is, so here A atom was donating the electrons, so this was the donor atom, whereas B atom was accepting the electron, so this was acceptor atom. And then we had studied if the donor atom will be donating a pair of electrons, so the donor atom will get a positive charge, whereas the acceptor atom, which is accepting a pair of electron, will now get a negative charge. And hence with this particular thing, we winded up our discussion in the last class, right? Now what we will be doing, so having discussed a lot about the Lewis dot structure, a lot about coordinate bond, covalent bond, today we will be discussing details of covalent bonding. Details of covalent bonding includes the theories which were given on how a covalent bond will be actually formed, okay? So let us start with the details now. So the very first thing that was given was the orbital concept of covalent bond. So these theories that we will be discussing today, we will also be discussing about the valence bond theory, and before that I will tell you what is the orbital concept of the bond formation. So these theories that we will discuss today, they are nothing but they are an add-on to the Lewis dot structure. So the Lewis theory was very basic. Now these are add-ons, so they are like, they will be taking help from Lewis, but then lots of stuff will be extra to be studied in these particular theories, okay? So what was said to us when we were talking about the orbital concept of bond formation? So this concept said that, yes, Actually, an atom wants to become stable by completing the octet. That is okay. Atom wants to become stable by completing the octet. All very nice, that yes, a particular atom wants to be stable by completing the octet. But the problem is how the atom will become stable. Now we'll not say that carbon is having 4 electrons in the valence shell. 4 hydrogen atoms will be coming, each with one electron. They will be sharing the electrons from carbon, and carbon will thus be sharing electrons with these 4 hydrogens and forming a molecule? No. So Lewis suggests this thing that okay, the electrons will come merge with each other and blah blah blah. But when we were talking about the orbital concept of bond formation, according to this particular concept, it said that it followed one basic rule which says that an orbital can have a maximum of 2 electrons but with opposite spins. So this you have already studied when we were doing the chapter structure of atom or atomic structure, right? That any particular orbital, it can have a maximum of 2 electrons, each with opposite spin. Like for example, if I talk about lithium, atomic number 3 could be written as 1s2 2s1. Okay, so see here lithium is having the 1s orbital having 2 electrons with opposite spin and another 2s orbital having just 1 electron, so 1 spin will be there, right? Now we know this thing that any particular atom may have unpaired outermost electron. The valence electrons which are there, they may be unpaired. So when I am talking about bonding, why can't I introduce this particular fact? That the atomic orbital of one particular atom can come and merge with the atomic orbital of another atom. So that when the overlapping will take place, the new orbital will have again 2 electrons but in the opposite spin. So the same thing was written under the orbital concept of bond formation, which says that the half-filled orbitals from different atoms. So now we say that the half-filled orbitals, or maybe the empty orbitals, the half-filled orbitals, or in special cases you can study about the empty orbitals can accept the electrons from the filled orbital of another atom and will lead to bond formation. See, what I am trying to figure out. I am saying that either you will be taking the half-filled orbitals or you may be taking the empty orbitals from one particular atom. Let me be very clear. I am typically talking the case where one atom will be combining with another atom. I am not saying the orbitals of the same atom will merge. No. I am saying orbital from one atom will merge with the orbital of another atom. Now there are different possibilities. Here only I have written this thing. For example, let us say there is an s orbital which is having one electron. It may be considered to come close to another s orbital. So this is of one hydrogen atom, this is of one hydrogen atom. See carefully, hydrogen was 1s1, this hydrogen is also 1s1. According to Lewis, what did you show? You people have just shown like hydrogen comes with 1, another hydrogen comes with 1, the two share and thus the duplet is completed, so the bond will be formed. But this time I am saying no. The bond is not formed just by sharing the electrons like that. What happens actually is, so let's try to understand. What happens actually is each hydrogen atom is 1s1, so the another hydrogen atom is also 1s1, right? And you know that this atom might be, the electron might be moving in the clockwise fashion and here the electron might be moving in anti-clockwise fashion. And this is also possible that both of them were moving in clockwise direction, but then when you are making them come close to each other, the one will orient itself in such a way that it should be opposite to the another. So when one orbital, which is 1s orbital, which is spherical, is having the electron like this, and the another, which is again spherical, is having an electron like this, when they come and try to merge with each other, so when the overlapping will take place. So the overlapping takes place in such a fashion that the two orbitals should be having electrons in the opposite spin, right? So this is what we will say. This is how the bond formation between the two atoms will take place. That's point number 1. Fine. Now this is also possible that the orbital of one atom has both the two electrons, right? This is possible. And another atom which is coming has no electron at all. Fine. So this is fully filled and this is empty. So when fully filled is here, see, the new orbital which will be formed should be having a maximum of 2 electrons. So if this is having 2, it cannot have 1 because then 3 will be there, right? So if it is having 2, it should be empty. Now the overlapping can take place. So that is possible, right? However, when I ask you to consider this particular case, so I said that this is having 1, so this should also be having 1, both of them should be of opposite spin, then only when the two combine with each other, so they should be merged like this, okay? Now, having done this particular thing, there was another term which was to be defined and this term is known as what is covalency. I think I have defined covalency in earlier class also, but then that time covalency I defined with respect to Lewis only, but this time related to orbital concept, let me define what is covalency. Covalency is basically defined as the combining capacity of any element. If there is any particular element, what is the combining capacity of that particular element will be termed as its covalency. That means how many electrons can be shared by an atom with the other atoms so as to attain the stable noble gas configuration. So as to attain the stable noble gas configuration. So what does this mean? When I will be talking about covalency, I can either call it to be the combining capacity of any particular element. Like hydrogen is forming one bond, so covalency is 1. Oxygen needs to form 2 bonds. Because oxygen is having a total of 6 electrons in the valence shell, it wants to make them 8. So in order to make the count from 6 to 8, oxygen needs to share 2 electrons. So when it is going to share 2 electrons, the covalency will be 2, right? Similarly, you remember when we have done this example of SF6. So sulfur now had formed 6 bonds, right? So S, F, 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 F. So sulfur formed a total of 6 bonds, right? So in that particular case, the covalency of sulfur was considered to be 6. Let me give you another example. For example, IF7. In case of IF7, iodine is attached to 5 fluorine atoms. So how many bonds are being formed by iodine? 7, right? So the covalency will be 7. In case of PCl5, one phosphorus is linked to 5 chlorine atoms around its side. So the covalency of phosphorus will be what? 5. Okay. That means this covalency thing which was denied by Lewis. Lewis said that no, the only thing I know is the completion of octet. Right? Octet has to be completed. But now according to the orbital concept, the covalency can be any number. I mean, it is not necessary that it can have a total of 8 electrons in the valence shell, nothing like that. Okay? So don't get confused. This complete concept of orbital theory, or this theory which was given related to the orbital concept of bond formation, this is very vast. So let's do one by one. Now we will be starting with the valence bond theory. But before I start that, I want you to note down everything which is there on the board. So quickly note it down and then we'll start with the valence bond theory. Note it, guys. Okay, so I think everyone has written down the details which are there on the board. Now I'll start my discussion with a very fine theory for the bond formation, which is known as valence bond theory. Let me just prepare the board for you. And now the topic that we will be doing is valence bond theory. Which is VBT. So let's try to understand what do we mean by the valence bond theory of VBT. So the valence bond theory of VBT was first proposed by no one is going to ask you all the details, but still it's good if you know, so that's just okay. And then later on there were certain modifications that were introduced into the VBT, and thus it was modified by, let's say, Slater. Okay. So there was a complete description what was related to valence bond theory, and this VBT was basically responsible for the, it was just a theory for explaining the formation of covalent bonds by orbital concept. So this VBT also uses the orbital concept of overlapping, and thus the postulates were written. Okay. So, the very first postulate of the valence bond theory says that half-filled orbitals, let me first write it down so that I can explain you. Half-filled orbitals, each having the electron in opposite direction. So, the half-filled orbital each having the electron in the opposite direction will come from different directions See, I should have written that both the two orbitals will be having electrons in opposite spin. You can say it's much better to write spin here. And the two orbitals will come from different directions in such a way so as to have maximum overlapping. This was the concept behind the valence bond theory. So, it said that for the formation of a valence bond, it is mandatory that two orbitals, and both the two orbitals should be half-filled, both of them should be having one electron each. The electrons should be present in such a way that if this electron is spinning like this, the other has to have the opposite spin. If one is plus half, the other has to have a minus half, right? So, now the two orbitals will be coming close to each other in such a way that they can overlap with each other. These are two orbitals. So, they are coming approaching each other, but they have to approach in such a way that there has to be overlapping. Now, this overlapping is nothing but this is bond formation. So, whenever there will be orbital overlap taking place, that is what is said to be the bond formation. Now, see, for example, these two hands of mine. Let's say I am holding them like this. So, don't you think anyone can easily come and break them away from each other? Suppose I say I am just touching them like this, so it's even easy to break them. Or if I say no, I am holding them this much tight, so it's little difficult to break them away. Now, let's say if I am holding them in such a way that it's like this, then you have to apply lots of force from outside to break it. See, even now I feel like strain, right? It's difficult. That means according to this valence bond theory, the another postulate that was given was the more will be the overlapping, or you can say the strength of the bond so formed will be directly related to the extent of overlapping taking place. So, if the two orbitals will approach each other from maybe whatever distance, but if they are approaching very close to each other, and even after approaching close to each other, if they are interacting, or let's say if they are merging together very nicely, they are overlapping very nicely, then a stronger bond will be formed. So, if the extent of overlapping will be more, we can say the strength of the bond will be more, right? That means again and again you can see there is a point coming into picture, and this point is somehow direction. So, this word is really important. Then the strength of the bond is formed is directly related to the extent of overlapping takes place, which directly depends upon in which particular direction the bond is being formed. That means now it makes me come on to another conclusive point which says that the covalent bond so formed have directional nature. So this is the third postulate given by VBT, and this says that the covalent bonds so formed have directional nature. Now let me tell you a little more theory related to this particular point where I am saying that the covalent bonds are having directional nature. What do we mean by directional nature? What do we mean by non-directional nature? For that thing, first let me define ionic bond. I didn't discuss this point when I was discussing the details about ionic bond because I was waiting for today's lecture, that today together I will teach you what is directional and non-directional properties. Listen carefully. When I was talking about the formation of an ionic bond, I said that a cation, for example Na plus, will be coming very close to the anion Cl minus, right? Now we have also studied, I have not drawn it properly, but we have also studied that each cation will be spherically charged, right? Similarly, the anion that will be there will also be a typical sphere, right? Now see, one Na plus is bonded to Cl minus, maybe I have written like this. So a force of attraction is there. Now I am saying if instead of making Na plus here, you want to make Na plus somewhere here, then also it is same. If instead of making Na plus here, let us say you want to make Na plus here, it's one and the same thing. If you want to make Na plus here, one and the same thing. Na plus here, one and the same thing. Okay, so suppose I am keeping Na plus here, I will consider this direction as my x-axis. That's it. If I am considering my Na plus here, I can consider this as my x-axis. That's it. If I am considering Na plus here, I can consider this as my x-axis. That means ionic bonds so formed are non-directional. And what do we mean by non-directional nature of the bonds? So non-directional nature of the bonds simply means that from any particular direction, if you look at the molecule, then the molecule is exactly same, right? So when there is Na plus and there is Cl minus, you look them from this end or this end or this end or this end, everything, whatever you do, it's same, right? So electron density in all the 3 or 4 or 5 or infinite number of cases will be same. Because, why so? Because they are spherical. Because the ions which are the constituents of ionic bonds, they are spherical in nature. And spherical means what? Spherical means if this is the nucleus, equal distribution of electrons around the nucleus. You go in whatever direction, it's a symmetrical sphere, everywhere you can see the same thing, right? The same happens with Na plus also. The charge density around the nucleus of Na plus is exactly same, right? However, when you talk about covalent bond, then I say that the covalent bonds so formed have got a directional nature. What do we mean by the directional nature of a covalent bond now? So see here very carefully. When I am talking about the covalent bond, I said a covalent bond is basically formed by the overlapping of orbitals. That means the way when I was talking about ionic bond, I was concerned about ions which I said have a symmetrical nature. But now when I am talking about covalent bonds, their constituents are nothing but they are orbitals. Now not all the orbitals are directional or non-directional. For example, if I ask you to consider s orbital, What do we mean by s orbital? S orbital simply means, suppose this is the center, go from here to here, here to here, here to here, here to here, here to here. Anywhere you go, you will find the same electron density, right? So when you will be finding the same electron density around the center, so this is known as non-directional. So you can't specify the direction that, ma'am, on x-axis the electron density is more compared to y-axis, nothing. Because if you are saying this is x-axis, whatever is electron density is same here, is same here, same here. So everywhere the electron density is same. However, when I ask you to take a pause and when I ask you to talk about p orbital is something like this, or to be more particular about the shape, p orbital is something like this, right? Now in this particular p orbital, I am saying the electron density is something like this. This is the nucleus, first it increases up to a maximum distance, then decreases. It increases up to a maximum distance and then decreases, right? That means, let me consider this as the x-axis. So if I am considering this as the x-axis, I will say there is more electron density around the x-axis. You will say, right, ma'am, this bulb or this dumbbell is more towards the x-axis, right? Or it is oriented towards the x-axis. So similarly, you can draw the pattern on x-axis. So do you see any electron density in this y-axis? No. Do you see any electron density in this z-axis? No. That means you can say, right, ma'am, the electron density distribution is not same along all the 3D space. It is more in one axis compared to the other two. Only and only x-axis is having the electron density, not the y and z axis, right? Similarly, if I ask you to consider d orbital, so this was s, this is p. Now if I am asking you to consider a d orbital, so the d orbital is something like this. Now you can easily understand, right, that, ma'am, yes, there is electron density in between x and y axis, but there is no electron density in the x and y axis. See, I am specifying the directions that x and y is bad, but in between x and in between y is good, right? So this is what I wanted to bring to you people, that if you are talking about the covalent bond formed, then the covalent bond so formed will be having a directional nature. You will be able to figure out that, ma'am, along this particular direction the electron density is more compared to this, okay. So you can differentiate them on the basis of direction. In the covalent bond formation, if the bond is formed from purely s orbital, then maybe you can say the covalent bond is non-directional, otherwise it will have a directional attitude, it will have a directional characteristic. Fine. Now moving further, if I continue, what I said, now if I am talking about the strength of bond formation, so I am continuing with the same topic, let me write it down again. The strength of bond formation is directly correlated to the overlapping. Check whether overlapping is having a single P or it's having a double P. You need to check it, okay. Now see, I am saying if the overlapping will be more, then the strength of the bond will be more. That means the bond will be more stronger. Now our question is, ma'am, what are the factors affecting overlapping, right? If you get to know the factors affecting overlapping, you will get to know the factors affecting the strength of the bond. You will get to know whether a bond will be stronger bond or a weaker bond. Am I right? Now see, the overlapping of orbitals is further divided into two categories. Like the overlapping of orbitals can be different because the nature of orbitals may be different, okay, like how the nature, on the basis of nature of orbital, maybe we can have the different strength of bond, or maybe by nature of overlap. If I'm taking the same set of orbitals, then maybe the overlapping is taking place in such a way that it will bring about a good bond or it can bring about a weaker bond. So let us first study the case of nature of orbitals. So that's our first topic. We will be studying the details of nature of orbitals. How on the basis of nature of orbitals we can say that the bond so formed will be a stronger bond or a weaker bond. So listen to me very carefully. So if the bond is formed by the orbitals having directional nature, if the bond is formed by the orbitals having the directional nature, the bond will be a stronger bond compared to the bond so formed when the orbitals have non-directional nature. If the bond is formed by the orbitals having directional nature, the bond will be a stronger bond. If, however, the bond is formed by the orbitals having non-directional nature, the bond will be a weaker bond. Okay, so now let us try to understand what do we mean by this particular statement. Let us say I want to form a bond between two p orbitals. Where is my duster? I have kept it somewhere. Okay. Let us say I am taking only s and p orbital into consideration, okay, and first I will be talking about p overlap, then I will be talking about ps overlap, then I will be talking about ss overlap, right. I have taken just two orbitals, one is s orbital, one is p orbital, and I am trying to have n number of permutation combinations, right. So see, a p orbital is something like this and s orbital is something like this, okay. So if I am talking about a pp overlap, one orbital, another orbital, right. I have tried to draw the same size. You can say, ma'am, this is the size of overlapping. I mean, this is the space which is covered during overlapping, right. Now if I am talking about ps overlap, p is still the same, but if I am trying to draw s, see, only this much space is occupied because the two can't come close very, the two can't come very close to each other. Why? See here carefully, this is the orbital of an atom. An atom must be having the nucleus in the center. So the nucleus will also repel each other. So they need to come close only till a particular distance where the nucleus repulsion should be avoided. However, when you take the case of s orbital, see, this is the extent of overlapping. Now can you say that the extent of overlapping in the case of pp is much greater than ps is much greater than ss, right. So don't you think a stronger bond will be formed in the case of pp overlap compared to ps overlap compared to ss overlap? Am I right? So this is what I wanted to teach you people in today's class. That means depending upon the nature of orbitals that are coming close to each other to form the bond. If the orbitals which are coming close are having a directional nature, then that particular bond so formed will be considered to be a stronger bond compared to the other bonds which are formed when the orbitals of some non-directional nature will be approaching. See here, the bond which is formed by two p orbitals. This is also p orbital, this is also p orbital. Here, and both of them are directional, right? Here directional, non-directional. Here non-directional, non-directional. So accordingly the strength of the bond changes, strongest, stronger, just strong. Okay. So this was just one factor which was trying to decide something related to the strength of the bond. But as per I told you, there is another factor also, right? How the two p orbitals are approaching each other. So see, if I am saying the two p orbitals are approaching like this, right? Or one is approaching like this, one is approaching like this, or one is approaching like this, other is approaching like this. So whether all of them will be forming the same bond, same bond strength, or maybe different, or no effect, or whatever. So we will be seeing, we will be looking into this particular thing in the next class. Fine. So till today I think this is enough. You people have got a good introduction about the topic valence bond theory, but I would like to continue this particular topic in next class too. So revise the lecture well so that we can meet again soon and we can study. So take care. Bye bye.